do like a, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but first off, I've got to make sure that there are people that are going to show up, so I have to put you onto add, copy link, Facebook. Okay, so I'm here. Okay, so I'm here. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about a little deeper dive into Andor, and what happened to the characters. Now, we have Partagas being allowed to sit by himself. Stormtroopers and his second in command are waiting for him to come out, and Partagas pulls out a DL-44, which is Han Solo's blaster. That's the model that he carries, and it's a big ass blaster. I mean, Partagas is intending to blow his own head off, and you hear a boom, and he does. Why did he kill himself? Because in a government-run system like the Empire is, he is the one that's in fault for letting Deirdre Marrow stick her nose where it didn't belong and get her hands on the Death Star secrets. Now, what they wanted to do with it is separate all the bits and pieces so you couldn't put them together, right? That's what you would do, okay? Our own government fucking does that, okay? Or did that. And, you know, somehow Deirdre not only got a hold of that stuff, but she read it, so she knew all about it. And she was, I mean, she stuck her nose where it didn't belong. So she gets arrested for not only failing to bring in Luthen alive, but failing to lock down the hospital in a way that Luthen would not be visited by his assistant and killed. All right, she basically, she did what Luthen would want her to do. And, all right, and Dedra, you know, is getting blamed for letting it happen. She was incompetent because she was nosy and she got in trouble. She got thrown in prison. Now here's the lesson learned. And this is all revolutionaries. And I wouldn't look at the empires not being revolutionary. They are, and that is just what they're, you know, do. And if you look at history, that's the way it is, all right? These big revolutions declaring the Galactic Empire is a revolution, right? You've got kids like Dedra who grew up in institutions created by that empire, raised for the sole purpose of being a revolutionary, like a Red Guard or a brown shirt or an SS officer for them. And I wish he'd stop doing that. So anyway, I hope you guys can hear me. They eat their own. Okay, look through history. One of Stalin's most loyal guys, Lavrenti Beria. Stalin starts to mistrust him, kind of like Saw Gerrera, just wiping people out because, you know, he huffed too much of that gas. And we'll get into some of the stuff that like that. Lavrenti Beria pissed Stalin off for some reason. You gotta be kidding me. Stalin had him murdered. He had him completely erased from the public eye. let's talk about Hitler, the other half of the socialism. Hitler wanted the German general staff to, basically support what he was doing. And his problem is that everybody noticed that the brown shirts, stormtroopers, you guys would know them as stormtroopers, brown shirts, they thought their leader their leader, Ernst Röhm, notorious buggerer of boys, by the way, said that we can take over for the military. Went on everything. We're going to do everything new. German general staff, very revered from the days of the Prussian army, was like, we ain't going to support anything until he's gone. You're not getting our help. All right. So Hitler decides, okay, we'll get rid of him. Because he had a lot of different political enemies and he could wipe them out all in one fell swoop. So I think it was in June of 1934. I've got a book called 1933, and it's about the U.S. ambassador, his daughter, and a bunch of other people, including the head of the Gestapo, which was a thing before the Nazis took over. The German secret police was a real thing before they took over. And this guy was an anti-Nazi, and he made it through the war, and then weirdly died of a gunshot wound on a hunting accident, and I call it bullshit. He was murdered. Anyway, Hitler grabs Goebbels, and they go to this spa town in Bavaria where Ernst Röhm and the leadership of the brown shirts, the stormtroopers, are holidaying with their boyfriends, their underage boyfriends, by the way. Break into the room. I mean, I'm sure it was like, bleh, bleh. Drag him away. All right. The revolution the Nazis started ate their own, right? Ate their own. And what you're saying with Partagas, with Mero, with the little guy who took over for Mero, who fucked up everything, made everything worse, by the way, they were eventually going to get destroyed because they didn't do their jobs. Hi, Kim. They didn't do their jobs. And just like in communist Russia, in communist China, if you don't perform up to the expected duties, or you do something out of the ordinary, or you just mildly piss somebody off who's higher up than you, you could be dead. You'll get eaten, right? Your revolution will come for you then. And that's always the way it is. I mean, look, if you look at Nazi Germany, the biggest revolutionaries Hitler had were the stormtroopers. They went out on the streets of Berlin and Munich and Dresden and Hamburg and Frankfurt and all the big cities in Germany, and had straight fights with the communists, right? I mean, but they had to be taken down a notch. So you get rid of Rome, you get rid of his buddies, and then you put somebody in place that's complacent. Hi, Kojak. And that's what you do. And that's what Hitler did. And he got the German general staff to go along with it. And it's not like there weren't people as part of the staff who weren't sympathetic to his cause anyway. I mean, but that's how he did it. Now, I look at Partagas, I look at Miro, and they were like, they failed. Right, they failed. Now, I'll give you another example. The Battle of Britain, 1941, late 41. Hermann Goering hung out, the guy that developed the Stuka dive bomber. Ernst Udet, who's somebody I've actually studied because he was Germany's World War One number two scorer, second highest scoring in Germany's World War One. He was a barnstormer. He was an aviation pioneer, right? He was the first person to fly across Africa, and he was notorious for partying at the Adlon Hotel, and he was a huge drunk, right? He got blamed because he came to the United States, saw our dive bombers, fell in love with the concept, brought it back to Germany, and created, got the engineers together, the aerospace engineers that they had, or airplane engineers, we'll call them, and they created the Stuka dive bomber, fixed wings, gull. They came out like that, like that. They had sirens on them. So, like, if you watch any World War II movie and you hear you hear the German planes coming, and they're diving, and you hear that scream, yeah, that's a siren. It's to cause panic. And the Germans didn't have a four-engine bomber. When there was a general named Walter Wever who was developing the four-engine bomber program, and conveniently he was killed in 1938. Goering trashed the program. So they had these two-engine bombers, Junkers, Heinkels, Stukas, with an escort of not a very bad fighter. The Me-109 was a good fighter, and that was the Battle of Britain. In no way were they ready or prepared to be able to invade Britain. Okay, the history books are, people are, oh my God, they're going to invade. No, they weren't. They didn't have anything to invade with. They didn't have anything. They were not prepared. So they thought they could bring Britain down by bombing the hell out of it. Had they had four-engine bomber squadrons and wings, they might have accomplished their mission. Thanks God they didn't do that. But they failed, all right? They failed. And Udet got blamed by Goering. Now, Hitler was done with everybody on that side. Goering basically self-banished himself to his estate called Karin Hall outside of Berlin. He was a notorious opium addict, and he was massively obese, painted himself with, makeup and his fingernails. But he was a pretty bad person. What happened to Udet, though, he was the one that got blamed. Goering said, yeah, but it's his fault. Udet goes to the Adlon Hotel again, gets a room, pulls out his Luger, draws, writes on the mirror, I think probably in his girlfriend's lipstick, I can't remember how this happened, Iron Man, you have betrayed me. Iron Man was Goering. And blew his brains out. Okay. Partagas. That's the first person I thought of Udet was the first person I thought of when I saw Partagas. Okay. Pull out that DL-44, which, of course, remind you guys, is Han Solo's blaster. So there ain't gonna be nothing left of his head, because that's a big hand blaster. Anyway, so, Deirdre paid for her nosiness, and she paid for her she was so ambitious and thought she was right that she went off to do her own things. And you don't do that in systems like that. You got to ask permission, and she didn't. Okay, we've got Partagas, now Luthen. Luthen is, I think, probably one of the most important people in the generating of the rebellion and the creation, because he was doing shit when no one else was, right? covertly, right? He was, you know, using the money that he earned from selling these antiquities to pay for operations. Getting Mon Mothma to mortgage her whole life to pay for these. Hey, Mike, how you doing? To pay for these to pay for these operations, right? And he got to be pretty much a hard ass, right? And people decided, like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa decided they didn't trust him, even though Bail, and this is just bad writing on Gilroy's part. The idea that Bail Organa would have somebody like that woman on his staff to help move Mon Mothma. So therefore you put the seed of, oh, he was really part of the Empire out there, because he doesn't get upset. When you see him sitting there in last week's episode, and he's not, why didn't he know who she was? Why didn't, he do something about that? Because, look, Bail Organa is not an idiot, right? Luthen finds out he's got somebody on there. He doesn't trust Bail. It's like, look, is Bail a good guy or a bad guy? So now we've got Gilroy throwing that question in your head, which goes against the character. Okay, it goes against the character. And I'm like, why would you do that? So Bail and Luthen don't get along. But Bail wouldn't be anywhere without Luthen, and neither would Mon Mothma. Luthen is the one that finds out there's a mole and a rotten person on that detail. And he also knows that Mon Mothma's driver is a bad guy. He's one of the, he's an Imperial. And he gets Cassian Andor to come out and get Mothma out of there, right? And it's Luthen who does that. It's not Bail. I mean, Mothma wouldn't have known how to do that. She probably would have gotten on some public transport. I mean, she's not well versed in how to do things. And if you look at Luthen, he's got everything compartmentalized, which probably is a lot of the reason, besides his being a hard ass. His being a hard ass made people not trust him. These people are compartmentalized. These people are compartmentalized. This operation doesn't know what this operation is doing. What did Jesus say in the Gospels? Never let the right hand know what the left hand is doing, or vice versa. I can never remember. That's what compartmentalization is, especially with somebody like Luthen, because ultimately he's got to try to protect himself too, right? So when he gets the information from Young, the guy with the big nose, who looks like Vincent van Gogh, he goes straight to Clea, and knowing, okay, yeah, thank you, Clea, to get the hell out of there. He was going to destroy the radio. That's when Dedra walks in, and instead of walking in with a bunch of stormtroopers and taking him away like she should have, she walks in by herself to confront him by herself, which you wouldn't see Dan Bongino do something that stupid. That was stupid. But again, Dedra doesn't know any better. All right, she literally doesn't know any better. She doesn't have that capability. Okay, I mean, a woman who perpetually has this look on her face is no. So Luthen tries to destroy that radio, which I'm like, a radio in Star Wars. Wow, that's some major league sophisticated equipment they've got. And then they're using Morse code. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, you're not doing World War II. This isn't a retelling of Casablanca either. Quit it. This is Star Wars. Try to make it look like that. And we got glimpses. We got X-Wings flying overhead. And suddenly K2SO appears. Too late, I think. He should have been discovered in the second 3-episode arc. That's where he should have showed up. So we had more of him. Luthen confronts her. He pulls out this ancient dagger and tries to kill himself. He doesn't quite make it. Why does he do that? Because he knows that torture works, and he will end up having to give up Yavin, where the rebellion is. And he also knows that the Death Star is real, all right? They wasted these 2 seasons on the wrong character. When you look at Cassian Andor, he's not a great character. Diego Luna is not a good actor. He didn't make me believe it. Luthen Rael should have been the guy the show was about. Okay, should have been about him, and Clea and Mon Mothma should have been played a little bit more gravitas. Just rewrite that whole thing. Make it mean something. So let's talk about things we never got to finish. Why'd they steal the TIE fighter in the first 3 episodes? What was the point of that? Nothing ever comes of it. Why? 1. What was the point of even having the weirdo Vel in any of the rest of it after her skanky friend dies? By Friendly Fire. Thank you guys, by the way, for that. Why? There's so many things you're like, why is that scene even in this? Why instead of Val talking to Andor, isn't it Mon Mothma? Why shouldn't, that should have been her in the last episode, not creepy. Okay? There was no point to it. There was no point to this character. None. Step further. Wilman. They get to the safe house on Coruscant. Wilman is sick or wounded or something. And his French Resistance girlfriend is there too. I'm like, can we know what happened to him? Is there, because it didn't happen in Gorman. So all right, we don't get any explanation. A lot of people are very happy, are fine with that. I'm not. To me, that's not good storytelling. So why is that? And why is, or this, Wilman is there outside of Jeddah or wherever he was, where he met Saw Gerrera, to put together this thing. Saw already is exhibiting the paranoia that somebody like Joseph Stalin would have, which, I've got so many, the show is schizophrenic. It really, really is. And it's very interesting to me how schizophrenic it is. But he puts together this thing that I guess creates fuel. Gerrera starts huffing. That was it. That's all. I mean, why include that if it was going no place? You know, we'll go back to Vel. Here's where I'm like, really? The poor French resistance fighter who accidentally, on purpose, shoots her friend and kills her. Thank you, God. Bella's the one that lectures him on what a great warrior she was. All right, how much more powerful would that be if Vel was a man, shaming him? All right. You know, I mean, how, you know, much more powerful would it have been for Gilroy to shame him? These are the problems I have with what we saw. Okay, it's, and the last 3 episodes were fine. They were actually, I've seen them twice now. My only bitch about them is that the end was anticlimactic. Andor goes off to the rings of Kefren. Clea's wandering around like a lost soul. All right, and we've got a guy playing Bail Organa who does a really good job. Now that tapping out there, that's the dryer. Well, you know, I think this is what I think happened. When you see scenes that go nowhere, the fighter that went nowhere, the fact that Andor lands on Yavin with that fighter, and meets these guys who are supposed to be technically rebels, and they all start fighting each other, and then to resolve the fight, they're playing rock, paper, scissors. They're all cut back because, look, I think Disney, I think the execs saw the shows, like how long they were going to be, like 8 episodes each, or, you know, each year, and they were awful. They were awful. So what I think is they forced Gilroy to stitch together through editing the best parts of each, which is why you get a plot twist to nowhere, the fighter. Vel sitting on Yavin looking through weapons, and then it doesn't go anywhere. It's like, no, they wanted to give her some scene that didn't mean anything because she's a dyke, right? Then we've got, there are other empty things. It's like, what? You know, the whole Cyril's mommy thing. Or Cyril has 2 mommies, actually. I couldn't stand it. First off, it was stupid. I mean, I look at him and go, you're a serial killer. You could be a serial killer. Because here's the deal. If you're thinking about, like, what kind of a man does that, it's a guy with a mom like his, right? And he's just a strange, cucked person, right? And, you know, a lot of the guys are really happy when he went off on Dedra and choked her. Because, I mean, you lied to me and blah, blah, blah. You should have seen this coming. Oh, another plot twist to nowhere. Lesbo teams up with the Gormans, and they take a bunch of weapons. They were supposed to prove that there were weapons going to Gorman, right? What happened? Did they? I'm looking at this going, what? This was meaningless. That episode, and you're waiting for Partagas and Dedra to call in the stormtroopers. None. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It just ends there. No outrage on the Senate floor. Nothing. except for when the Gorman massacre happens. And I'm like, why would you even put that scene in there or talk about it unless you weren't going to have a payoff? Okay, and they didn't. And I know for a fact, I know it now, that there was a lot more to this season for each of these shows that got left on the cutting room floor because it dragged on interminably, right? And Disney knew it. I'm sure Favreau put his, 3 cents in too, going, this is bad. What else did they expect was going to happen? But again, as slow as it was, the last 3 episodes at least were a lot more. They were better storytelling. That was better storytelling. I mean, Luthen, the fact that nobody trusted him, and of course you've got those 2 idiots who are on the High Council for the Alliance screaming about everything when they have absolutely no idea who Luthen is, because he was like, I know Mothma, I'm aware of Baron Organa, I'm the one that dragged Cassian Andor into this. Go with God. Everybody else, I don't trust them. And you can't blame him for not trusting them. You can't. So those 2 start screaming, and of course they're basically the built-in naysayers, right? The pessimists and the people who don't want to believe anything. And every show like this has to have that. And every if you look at our government, we have that. I'd like to ask John Thune a few tough questions about why the president's EOs have not been codified, so they're there perfectly, right? But, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, and I have to say that I'm glad it's over. I mean, I think my biggest problem is it's a Kathleen Kennedy thing. And granted, she's done no matter what, but I don't want to give anything that she's got any kudos whatsoever because she makes me want to vomit. Okay, literally. And it's been really quiet on the behind the scenes stuff going on at Lucasfilm lately. And I don't, I mean, you kind of sit and wonder what the heck is going on. Silence is basically a code for there's shit going down. Right. I mean, you go to Blue Skies and I get a daily report of what Pablo Hidalgo's doing from Friends. And, he's doing what he did there on X. And he didn't leave X because it turned out to be such a bad place. He left X because he was going to get fired if he kept that shit up because, nobody who's a Star Wars fan who is disgusted by the Kennedy era is going to go on Blue Skies, right? Because what they'll do is do what they did to us on Twitter, right? And so you gotta let them have room to make fools of themselves. And then you get screenshots, right? So you have receipts, which I think are great. But, so we don't really know. All I know is that this is what I know. Pretty sure Kennedy's done this year sometime. Andor was her last hurrah. Maybe if it's moderately successful, she'll leave sooner rather than later. And that's all. I mean, that's it. That's it. There are characters like if you wanted to go do something and you wanted an actual spin-off show that actually would be good, do one about Luthen. Just do a Luthen Raw, like, 3-episode arc to give him more, or like 8 episodes, like Kenobi. And, you know, have him meet actual characters that actually did mean something in the original trilogy. And I'm not talking about Bail Organa or Mon Mothma. I'm talking about Chewbacca, Han Solo. You know, that would be interesting to see Raul have to use somebody from the outside to get something for him. Gets it done, it gets all exciting and everything. And at the end, he offers whoever that is, why don't you come work for me? Work for this group I'm starting up. He explains it to him, and the guy says, hell no, I don't want nothing to do with that. I already have enough trouble in my life, I don't need any more. I don't need any Imperial entanglements. Walks away. And that would be a good show. But instead, we get Cassian Andor, a character I give no fucks for. I don't. Why? Why? Kathleen Kennedy, this is what, he walks out, he's wearing a jacket, he's got a DL-44 on his hip. He thinks he's Han Solo. That's why. That's it. That's why. It's DEI casting. Think about that. All right, DEI casting for Bix. DEI, you know, there's a lot of DEI casting in this. DEI storytelling. Right? And what's really weird, and I'm going to leave you guys with this, the subtext of all this was not what Gilroy intended. Because what you end up feeling is that the bad guys are really the leftists. Because, you know, here's a little secret. If you think the Nazis were right-wingers, you're wrong. National Socialist German Workers Party, NSDAP, right? Think about it. Think about it. All right, it's done. I know, you know, JD, yeah, I know. Let's just not, I don't care. The movie was good. The characters were about as likable as a toe fungus. Okay, don't care. Don't care if Cassian Andor and Jyn Erso died. You know, don't care. Don't give a shit. Don't give a shit about any of them. He should not have had a show. He got a show because of DEI. That's it. That's all. And, you know, I would have rather seen a Luthen Rawl, call it Birth of the Rebellion, or something like that, or Welcome to the Rebellion, and have him go through. If you knew Galen Erso, yeah, that would have been great. I mean, and, you know, we didn't get to see him interact with Bail Organa. We didn't get to see him, which would have changed that relationship, I think. I mean, he was the most interesting character. I mean, why? You know, why didn't, you know, what you do when you, I think when you come up with the stories, you start going, ooh, are we going the right way with this character? Now, I'm going to say this. If it's filmed in England, they get tax incentives for DEI hires. If it's filmed in California, the same thing. Now, there's a volume stage that's been built or is being built in Nevada, and they don't do that shit. They don't. They're, you know, they let them film whatever they want. All right, let them film whatever they want. Same thing in Texas, and in fact, Texas is going to start putting out, I read this, I think it was Deadline, maybe THR, put this out there with a picture of Harrison Ford on a horse, saying Texas wants to bring productions to their state. Good. good, because the creatives like John Favreau, who aren't woke at all, guys like Taylor Sheridan aren't woke anyway. They'll be able to do what they want and not be inhibited by, you have to hire this person. We're not going to get the tax break if you don't. You know, fuck you. That's my opinion. I mean, I can't help it, but, you know, and my thing is, here's the thing about diversity. You have a TV show like Shrinking, set in an upscale LA neighborhood. Diversity is already there. You don't, you're not expecting anything but. You take a show like The Last Jedi, and it's pounded in there like a square peg in a round hole, everywhere. Vice Admiral Gender Studies, Rose Tico assaulting Finn. The way Oscar Isaac was treated by Vice Admiral Gender Studies and Leia, which is so out of her character. So you're like, why would they do that? Why? They are hiring DEI actors and writers, and if you look at Roundhead Johnson, he's not gonna do Star Wars the right way. If you look at The Last Jedi, it's the most mean-spirited film I think I've ever seen in my life, because it contradicts everything George wrote. If you liked it, you're not a fan, right? I mean, again, I think part of the reason why Mark Hamill's pretty much gone nuts is because of what they did to him. And it never should have happened. And I think there are a lot of people that were involved with The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, who wish that they had stood up and said something. But they didn't. DEI started the moment Barack Obama won his second election, right? And all these people started getting uppity and angry, get in their faces. You don't get in my face. You're not going to get in my face, because if you do, I might follow you out and tell you the rules of the road, all right? Because I take any sort of action like that as being assault. You lay a hand on me, you're going to jail. I mean, that's just me. But they were told to do that, and they did that. They really were. They were told to do that, and they did that. They did that with The Last Jedi. They did that with Ghostbusters 2016, right? I mean, that's a conversation I'd love to have with Bill Murray. Why were you in that? For the money, I assume, because it was awful. Because the guy who wrote it didn't know how to write it. I mean, you look at the differences between, they're talking about the technology they're using in 2016, and then you look at the technology and Rey and Egon and Peter having this discussion about having nuclear weapons on their backs. Like, no testing. We should have tested these before. That's a guy knowing what people want to see, putting something that guys would say, and a bunch of some cucked white beta male doing this, and people going, what am I watching? Again. And it's not like women can't explain, behave that way. They were just not allowed to, all right? Because there's no personality in feminist anything. There isn't. I mean, zero, right? And we get back to Star Wars. We get back to Andor. It's woke. It's woke. It is. We have, straight beta males, the guy that Perrin, Mon Mothma's husband. it just, the attack on marriage from Mon Mothma to her daughter, and her daughter told her to get fucked, basically. We, yeah, I mean, the only relationship that actually kind of stood the test of time in a way is Bix and Andor, right? And that was, I mean, that's where Tony Gilroy and his brothers think straight relationships are. They're either Perrin and Mon, or they're Andor and Bix. So, sorry, my nose, you guys. So there you go. I mean, you know, just go. Anyway, I gotta go. I've got some stuff to do, and I just wanted to. I was bored, so I've got some stuff to do upstairs. You guys have a good afternoon. Have a good day, and if something happens as far as like, we get a Sparrow update, please, I'll be back. See you guys around the galaxy.